persuasion. It's called it's just called liking. And of course, this sounds like the most kind of trivial, of course, moment that you can imagine. But
People are
there are
sorry. People
certain, yeah.
are shit posting about whale meat in the chat. Whale meat is actually good. It was just this specific instance of this person, talking to me. That was the hyper focus of the
Well,
conversation.
yeah, I think he knew you were Norwegian, so he used it as a sort of an opener, right?
Yeah, he
But
did.
I think because he was by himself, then it comes across as maybe a little bit more weird than that. I
Yeah,
mean, I
he was a
talked to him
nice guy.
later.
I don't want to, I
Yeah,
don't want to talk
no, no,
shit about
I mean,
friends.
I'm not gonna, yeah, I'm not mentioning any names, or this could be like anybody, right? But yeah, I did talk to the guy. We had a great conversation. And so on, but it's just a sort of an example of what could potentially be off-putting to someone, like if you're not mindful of this kind of social proof angle, right? Um, so, but yeah, liking, we have the picture here that we used in the Finland stream. That's surprisingly one of our more popular streams on the Longhouse. I think it's because of the pretty ladies in the thumbnail, but you seem to claim that you saw something else on the analytics, that it's actually coming from some other site. Maybe the Finns are sharing this among
Maybe
themselves or
I
something.
would have to pull up the analytics again to let me see if I can find the Finland stream
Yeah,
here.
yeah, I mean it's a little bit it's not of great importance to this, but the picture here is then of Finnish Prime Minister and Uro Kekkonen and Khrushchev basically having a BFF moment, which is I mean, people are influenced by people they like. People will do stuff with people they like, and if they don't like you, then they will not do stuff with you. That sounds like the most obvious thing, but we can break this down into, okay, what makes people like someone. The first point that he brings up is physical attractiveness, right? If somebody's good looking, you like them, and you're not immune to this, right? Nobody's immune to this. There's a lot of studies been done. I mean, you could Google stuff like the halo effect, where people will attribute
Yeah.
positive characteristics to people who are good looking, whether it would be intentions, like if they make a mistake, they do something wrong. It's been, it'll be attributed to them as a mistake, or as a misunderstanding. Let's say if you're just like a really ugly person, then people will interpret the mistake as being malicious, right? This is very typical. I think most people have experienced that on some level, that there are different leagues of people, and
Yeah.
different ways they're being
Be
treated based on how
attractive,
they
don't
look.
be unattractive, right?
What's that meme that's how to pick up a
Uh,
woman in the office or something, and it's like
yeah, it's the remember the rules and the HR stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
uh, be attractive.
Yeah.
That's the rule. And of course, it sounds like it's just kind of stupid. I don't want to lean into that sort of incel angle where they talk about, being height pilled, or age pilled or whatever. But there are
It
things that you
does
can
play a
do.
role.
If you are well groomed, right, it does help.
That usually helps, yeah.
If you're in shape, that does help. If you have good posture and so on, there are certain things that you can do to optimize a little bit in terms of the influence you have on other people. If you smell good, that helps, right? You're just more likely, if you are pleasant, to influence people. So again,
I will
very
add real quick. I pulled up the analytics for the Finland stream real quick, just because I was interested, and apparently there's a lot of people coming from Google and Telegram and Discord and Gab on that specific video, and I don't know why.
so there's some based Finnish
Someone shared
Discord.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this, thank you, and hit us up on the Longhouse Matrix in the description if you want to hang out in an even more based channel.
Yes. So another thing that induces liking is, of course, similarity. I mean, you can see with the boys here, you got two grown men. They're both bald. They have like the same suits on, and they both work in politics. They probably have like similar families and so on. I mean, this is something that you like, people who are similar to you. This is, of course, not another thing that's not shocking, but I mean, it might seem a little counterintuitive if you're growing up in the global homo era, where it's all about the inner being, in a sense, that and adults might not be completely honest with you about this. That the fact that if you dress like other people, and you act like them, and you talk like them, they will like you better. They just will. It doesn't matter, like how you express your inner dream child or something. It's just going to be off-putting to them if you are too different. So the dress style is probably one of the first things he points to, is that you dress as other people do. They feel safe with you. They feel familiar and so on. The other thing is then interests. That it's sort of a typical sales strategy where let's say somebody is trying to sell you a car, and they will look at the markers or something, that maybe you have a T-shirt with Liverpool on it, and they'll start talking about football with you. Or they see maybe you have like a Linux tie or something, and they'll try to talk about operating systems, or they'll try to find any hook that they can use to make them think that you are like them, and from that angle they will try to sell you something or influence you. And like, usually I like to think of myself as being sort of immune to this stuff because I have to hide my power level so much, but I was actually sold on to a sort of investing course by a salesman over the phone who was somehow able to pick up that I am like right wing of disposition. I mean, like, it sounds like a complete joke, but he was talking to me
I
about,
can see it. I mean, that's why when you meet a good salesman, you kind of have to applaud it, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I just, still applause. I felt like, I mean, I overpaid for that course. It wasn't like insane. I didn't borrow money or anything. I felt like it wasn't the total value of it, but he was selling me on the fact that, yeah, well, if you use like these regular resources for real estate contracts, it's going to have like this kind of leftist slant because of the labor government, and a lot of that union stuff is going to be backed in there. But we have like the real, right wing contracts and the real kind of right wing methodologies. This was bullshit. They did not have any of that stuff. But he sold me in on that. Like, that's the reason that I think I signed on and like paid the price for that course. So I mean, again, applause. He's the only guy that's figured that out, by the way, who I've talked to, because I've been in other situations, whether it's been like with negotiating salary or with employment situations or sales or something, and they will always pick the wrong thing to try to.
He's probably realized that whenever I call these like white men over a certain age, 80% of the time they're going to jibe with conservative values. If it's a woman, I'm going to go the lefty route. This guy's probably making bank being a salesman.
I mean, yeah, he is. I think that's sort of, but it is a risk. Like, you could end up striking out.
I mean, yeah, but that's why it's a heuristic, right? In sales, it's not about the one sale. It's about the 100 calls and what's your hit rate, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've had the opposite expression where I've sort of declined job offers because he was trying to sell me on electric cars, that I was sort of an electric car guy, and I was just kind of turned off by it. I was just a lot of these things where it's either football or that I'm into electric cars, as you said, or some video game that I don't give a shit about. So it's a bit of hit or miss there. But if you know what you're looking for, this really works. Just try to focus on what you have in common with other people. Emphasize that. If you emphasize that, then it's easier to influence them. Let's say contact and cooperation is another thing. I mean, you like people that you're around, right? It's just, the more you're around them, the more you like them. And of course, assuming that you have like a regular relationship. If you're around them in a sort of competitive situation, then it's different, right? Because it's more associated with negative emotions. And the same thing goes for this sort of the idea of conditioning. In a sense, he talks about the idea that don't kill the messenger. Like, where does that idea come from? It's from like with these imperial messengers that are they have to bring bad news, right? And because
Persians, I think
people sort of associate. Like, I mean, this is something that goes very deep into like the mass psychology. Is that people are not as sophisticated as you think. It becomes like this kind of David Hume idea that your consciousness is like a bunch of sense impressions that are just colliding with each other and creating the experience of consciousness. And like,
and the result of that is that if someone tells you bad news, they're a bad person.
Yeah, they're a bad person, exactly. If you feel bad, or say like you have a headache when you meet someone, you're more likely to not like them because you have pain and you associate that pain with them. And of course, like, this sounds like it's, this is just stupid, right? This is people can't be this stupid.
I mean,
but
I don't want to, right? I don't want to derail this, but I think like Jen Psaki, right? She delivers the bad news, and then whenever the storms are blown over, the president comes out and sort of handles it, right? But he's never the one who brings the bad news.
No, exactly. That's it's a great observation. I love these. I mean, you could go all night and try to find like these creative ways that this principle is being applied here. But I mean, just to reinforce the point about the conditioning, the experiment of the Pavlov's dog, where you basically associate the idea of eating food with the sound of a bell, and then you can bring forth basically the salivation food response from the sound of the bell instead of the actual food. This is the idea that you can condition people to associate things with, associate really anything with anything. If these sense impressions are clustered together in time and space, and inside of your conscious experience, you will start to associate these things with each other. So that's something to sort of think about when you have like, if you have people in your life that you like, or people you don't like, or you have, literature that you like and literature you don't like, or hobbies and so on, to kind of ask yourself if you're the reason that you like this is because you had this introduced to you accompanying some more pleasant associations, or with people that you liked, or you just had a great day when you learned about go-karting or something.
Right.
And it's you're not really that particularly interested in the thing itself, but you associate it with a lot of positive memories.
Yeah.
I mean, for me,
I mean,
this is
that's the
like,
theory behind team building, but also sort of why it doesn't work because it's, it's mandatory fun.
yeah, I mean, it can work if done correctly. For me
Yes.
with this association stuff, I mean, it's really like retro gaming, right? Or sitting and playing like these games that come on Steam that are like these, 2D pixel art retro style games, which is something that I associate with happy times in my childhood. I mean, I don't imagine if I
You're
had a
sort of
childhood, yeah,
wearing the skin suit of the
yes.
games of the past. Yeah.
I mean, if I was associated, if I lived on a farm and I was maybe only reading books and I was not associated with any of these games, then I don't imagine that I would have picked up, retro games as a hobby, right? This is something that it just lives on pure association to like a simpler time, basically.
Yeah.
Um,
The Jungian child in you is crying out for the teeth of the
exactly.
video game mother.
So, but of course, I think we could look at if you bring up the quote sheet again and you go under liking, and then under similarity, and then there's a section under desegregation, because I thought that was interesting. It's something that he brings up in the book.
All right, I'll read it. On the basis of evidence that we are more favorable towards the things we have had contact with, some people have recommended a contact approach to improving race relations. Oh, I remember this part. They argue that simply by providing individuals of different ethnic backgrounds with more exposure to one another as equals, those individuals will naturally come to like each other better. However, when scientists have examined the school integration, the area offering the single best test of the contact approach, they have discovered quite the opposite pattern. School desegregation is more likely to increase prejudice between blacks and whites than to decrease it. Let's stay with the issue of school desegregation for a while, sorry. However well-intentioned the proponents of interracial harmony through simple contact, their approach is unlikely to bear fruit, because the argument on which it is based is terribly misinformed. First of all, the school setting is no melting pot where children interact as readily with members of other ethnic groups as they do with their own. Years after formal school integration, there is little social integration. The students clot together ethnically, separating themselves for the most part from other groups. Second, if there were much more interethnic interaction, research shows that becoming familiar with something through repeated contact doesn't necessarily cause greater liking. In fact, continued exposure to a person or object under unpleasant conditions such as frustration, conflict, or competition leads to less liking, and the typical American classroom fosters precisely these unpleasant conditions.
Yeah, so this is it goes back to the idea of really conditioning, and that if you're kind of a midwit, right, like some of these people who write the legislation are, and you just think that, okay, we've learned that people being together, they're going to like each other, but this is not going to work if they're not having a good time. I mean, if they're having a bad time, if the school environment is complete shit, and you know, you have like a standard thing where you put kids in school and you have like a multi-ethnic environment. It becomes like a prison, like a maximum security prison, and people just band together in gangs. You get like small, you know, sort of gang warfare, isolation, and so on. And like this is not going to make people less racist in a sense.
No.
It'll just make it worse because they haven't really understood, like, you know, why this is happening. So does go through sort of suggestions of how this could have been done differently in the book, as to trying to sort of foster more cooperative,
Cooperation,
cooperation and team building things, instead of just putting people in the same place. But yeah, I think we've covered sort of enough on this. There's of course a lot of there's a lot of writings on this guy Joe Girard. Actually, something I should have mentioned, that is, you know, the Guinness Book of World Records best car salesman. Who I think he has the record for selling like 1,432 cars in a year or something.
Yeah,
I mean, it's quite something. That's like 5 cars a day, every day for a year. But I mean, he did a lot of these things in terms of understanding the liking angle, where he would just send people, you know, gift cards with just writing, you know, "I like you" a lot or something. I mean, that sounds creepy, right? But apparently people were maybe a little bit less aware of these strategies in the past. So I guess he was a bit of a pioneer with just, you know, emphasizing the idea of just being liked over presenting a product. And so he got to Fish with Dynamite, but of course later the you know, book was rewritten, and his approach was considered like that's like the normal approach now. You know, a salesperson is not trying to sell you the product; they're just trying to make you like them.
Yeah,
and they do it because it works. So I guess the sort of the pro tip here is that let's say if you are out somewhere, if you're trying to get a job or get into a club or something, and you're going through an interview process, you don't want to emphasize, you know, your qualifications. You want to make the people interviewing you like you. That should be your number one priority, always. Like, make them like you, and the rest will solve itself. Your actual competency is secondary to that.
And I mean, having done quite a bit of sort of vetting on the recruitment side for the company I work on, a lot of the times I just, you know, I don't really care about their qualifications. Like 90% of the time when we're doing interviews and stuff, I just try to see, are these someone I like, just on an instinctual basis? Do I mesh well with this person? And if I don't, then 9 times out of 10, they're not a good fit.
But it matters, right? This is a kind of lived reality.
It does. And you know, you can do corpo speak and say, yeah, it's because we're going to be working with this person, so I need to know that, you know, this isn't going to be an issue. He's going to fit
what
into
do they
the
call it?
company culture.
The team, the culture round, or the team round?
Yeah, yeah.
You're not a good culture fit. Sorry, Bucko.
Exactly.
But it does matter, and of course this gets a little bit skewed, like with the you know, the policies around HR and affirmative action and so on, where they do end up cramming a lot of people who don't fit in companies in there because that's required by law. So I mean, it doesn't make things better. I know you have a lot of people who will claim that. We'll show you some stats. It's like, oh yeah, companies with more diversity are gonna like have higher rates of return or something. I don't believe it, honestly. Like, my gut feeling is just so strong on that stuff, based on every experience that I've had working with companies, is that the homogenous, small, organized companies are productive, and the big mixed kind of mega structures are completely unproductive. It really falls in this kind of 80-20 rule, where 20% of the people do 80% of the work, and the cash flow already exists, so they don't really have to struggle or find creative ways to make money. It's just kind of just keep the wheels going, essentially.
Yeah.
The other sort of interesting part here is really the sort of the idea of eating as this kind of pleasant experience, is that just sitting down and eating with someone else will make you like them better. And especially if you do this over time, it's something that, instead of trying to focus on, you know, what you should say in every individual moment to a person to make them like you, it's just, okay, are you spending time with them doing pleasant stuff?
Yeah, that should be in a pleasant environment.
That should be, you know, what you're looking for. I mean, I'm even seeing this on, let's say, like people who go on dates, where I'll sit and watch, you know, people who are on first dates, and you could just tell really quickly if it's going to go well or not, because if they're having fun, if they're doing something pleasant, it's likely to be like a return call. And if they're not, if they're falling into this kind of idea of just sitting and talking too much about themselves, or talking about, you know, let's say you meet a woman and you start talking about your schizo ideas, right? Or
you got to
like,
lead with the.
I saw like one time a guy who was on a first date with a woman, and he was talking about his climate and anxiety, right? You know, it's talking about how, you know, we need to reduce consumption, and, you know, we can't continue living like this. We need to downbuild society
that's
and so
bound
on.
To get her.
Yeah, she's gonna get wet instantly,
wet,
right?
Yeah.
No, of course it's not. He's just talking about having, you know, less.
Now,
stuff,
what you need to do is you got
to
to tell her how many babies you want. That's what you and just getting real close and give her a good sniff. Just let her know that you really appreciate her pheromones.
Yeah, and don't shower because it interferes with your pheromones.
Yeah,
no deodorant. Yeah. You want as many pheromones as possible.
Lead with the wooden doors. All right.
Hey, Paul.
I'm reminded of that
doors?
edit of where someone has edited what's his name, Mel Gibson onto Joe Rogan, I think, or was Mel Gibson on Joe Rogan?
He was on Joe Rogan, actually.
But they have edited it in sort of the wooden doors thing. It's really wooden doors? Yeah, wooden doors, Joe. Jamie, pull that up.